All right, we are back here on this Wednesday morning, and a little later in the program, I'm going to talk to you about this news in Henrico County about Muslim students. I lived in the Middle East. I've got friends all over the world. I'm not attacking individuals, but Muslim students who want to participate in Ramadan, which is coming up, kind of moves with the cycle of the moon, and it's coming up here in February. They will be able to take meals home for free, if I understand correctly, from Henrico County Public Schools. I think we should be a little concerned about that, and I want to talk to you about how it would be perceived if we were catering to Christian students or Jewish students because of their engagement with their religion. I think there'd be some pushback on that. Not that I would welcome that, but I'll tell you the worst case scenario that probably won't happen now, but could happen if we're not careful in another decade based on what I experienced in the Middle East. And we should be concerned about it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But right now, one of the big issues that was being litigated and argued about during the Ralph Northam years was Virginia Military Institute, VMI. It's an ancient school here in Virginia, state school. It's the citizen soldier concept. You're not going to one of the military institutes run by the federal government. It's a state school. It has a legendary connection to the Civil War with Virginians standing up for what at that time they perceived to be their country. I know nobody gets it these days because everybody moves from Virginia to New York to California, and they don't have the same roots that people used to have. And they've been brainwashed to think that the Civil War was only about slavery, certainly a component of it, but not the only motive. I mean, somebody explained to me why a farmer with no slaves would give up his life and send his two sons to go die if it didn't really impact them. Nobody really wants to talk about that, but at some point we should. But VMI continues to exist in the modern era, and there was this push for DEI. And I think a number of stories that were exaggerated and in some cases made up about racism on the post at VMI. Glenn Youngkin spared the school for 4 years, tried to return some sort of sanity to the governance of the school where there wasn't this constant turmoil and apologizing for the past and erasing and rewriting and whitewashing everything for the past. But now we've got a Democrat governor, and boy, they're going after VMI. Bob Morris is with the Cadet Foundation. He's been fighting to protect and preserve VMI for a number of years. He joins us now. Bob, let me see if we've got the graphic here that I posted on the Reid Revolution page on Facebook from the feds, talking about how they would preserve and protect VMI, maybe even take extraordinary action to save VMI. And I'm not sure what that means. I suspect that means they could use eminent domain or cut off funding. The Trump people that seems to be one of the hammers they use to get people in line and get them to at least obey the law, if not conform with the conservative view on things. Just obey the law is the basic standard. Bob, what's your reaction to that?
Well, John, thanks for having me on. I think there's a lot of emotion going on right now with this. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to have a little context. VMI isn't just another public university. Okay. It has a statutory military role under Title 10 U.S. Code Armed Forces. And when legislation creates an uncertainty around the governance and funding of a military institution, higher authorities have the duty to assess continuity and readiness. I mean, extraordinary measures doesn't mean panic here. That means that contingency planning to protect cadet training, ROTC pipelines, command authority. The concern here isn't VMI's mission. It's that political instability forces military oversight bodies to get involved. That's a signal the process has gone too far. Let me give you an example. For example, under the previous administration, and I want to make sure I clarify this, not General Furness, the current superintendent, VMI cited...
You mean the administration of the school, not political.
Right, the administration of the school VMI cited Title 10 U.S. Code as authority to restrict student journalists, compel cadets to attend inclusive excellence training, attend NCAA sporting events, and other non-military activities. Now, kudos to General Furness for letting cadets go on TV. That never would have happened previously. Okay?
Well, in this latest iteration of the conflict,
right.
They're able to speak in public.
Right. They were on Fox TV. They gave interviews. That never would have happened before. Had that been allowed, it would have probably refuted the dysfunctional Barnes and Thornburg report. So it's important to understand that many of the race and gender allegations in House Bill 1377, this study, which really isn't a study, that's called for that task force, they're federal, not state violations. Okay, we learned during the flawed Barnes and Thornburg investigation that Chev does not have the authority, the responsibility, or the structure to do these. When they get complaints like this, they send them to the federal government. That's their policy. So the question becomes, why not here? So, VMI is a senior military college under Title 10 U.S. Code. The Secretary of Defense can't even change that. Only Congress can change that. By
what does that mean in a practical sense?
Well, in a practical sense, there are 6 senior military colleges established by Title 10 U.S. Code to produce officers for the services.
So that's what? VMI, the Citadel, I guess?
Norwich.
Okay.
Norwich is another one. And so the federal government is absolutely a stakeholder in what happens to those.
Does the federal government send a lot of money to VMI? I don't know what the state budget is for VMI versus, I don't know the source of the funding for the school.
Okay, well, according to what General Furness briefed to the legislature, about 40% comes from alumni, and then there's a larger percentage that comes from the state, and then I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I can get them for you. From the federal government, you've got ROTC dollars, you've got research dollars, you've got a lot of other dollars. So they have a monetary impact on what they do. And with VMI being one of the major pipelines for officers going in the military, they absolutely have a stake in the quality and the nature of the education and the training that those cadets receive, as well as any potential interruptions to that pipeline has a national readiness issue. So why, so I don't get excited when somebody says extraordinary measures, because that's
I do. I think that's more than you've gotten from anybody else who wanted to support the school, given that they're trying to trash the place. I mean, they've torn down statues, they've sandblasted age-old statements, they've erased certain alums and professors because they don't like their connection to the Confederacy. I mean, I'm sorry, you live in Virginia. There are a lot of places that have a connection to the Confederacy, and I don't think that should be a death sentence for an institution or for a family name or for good lessons. No one else has ever stood up for the school. I mean, Glenn Youngkin, to his credit, I think attempted to put new board members in who would stand up against the radicalism that was on display. But then on day one, Abigail Spanberger, the new Democrat governor, decided she was going to put Ralph Northam, who, I don't hate Ralph Northam. I hate to beat up on Ralph Northam. I thought he was just going to go away after kind of the disaster of his governorship. And I think that's unfortunate, forced in large part by the Democrats. But this is the guy who was the head of the honor court, if I remember correctly. I think that's right, at VMI. I think he served in that capacity. And yet, as governor, he either lied when he said that it was him in that picture in blackface or in the KKK gown, which is obviously a joke, a bad joke, but a joke. Or he lied when he kind of rescinded that and said, I'm really not sure what this is. And it's puzzling to me that the leader of the state, a native Virginian, somebody who had been the head of the honor court at VMI would be allowed to obviously lie one of those two times. I don't know which one it was. And then Abigail Spanberger, who called for him to resign as governor over the whole thing. I mean, she actually put out tweets saying, this is disgraceful. He needs to resign. Now, I guess no one's going to bother to ask her why she's doing a 180 and taking the former governor. I mean, maybe he raised a lot of money for her campaign. I don't know. Put the former governor back on the board. None of this makes sense. So I think the Trump people are looking at this like this is ridiculous, and it's so obviously stupid. And there are plenty of people in Virginia who are pro-VMI and don't believe the lies about the racism, that they're going to take the risk of standing up.
John, I agree with you, and I think I need to clarify here. I'm not saying I don't welcome this insight, and we don't. It's long overdue that somebody outside should come in and do this. What I'm kind of framing here, and I won't go into the issues of the former governor, other than to say that on October 30th, 2020, 4 days after the infamous letter going down that started the report, he published a thing called a work plan for VMI, 3 pages. That's never been disclosed despite people asking for it. So a simple thing for this House bill would be, why don't you just agree to let that out there? Let's go down that list and see if everything in your work plan was accomplished when you were the governor. But, getting back to the main point of the federal insights into this, when a state-supported institution that's a senior military college faces instability, ambiguity in governance, or political interference, higher authorities are obligated to assess the readiness and the mission integrity. And if there are extreme measures taken that alter that, then it merits extreme measures taken to correct it. And
do you get the impression that there is a solution that's possible if everybody just kind of what did Hillary Clinton used to say? Everybody step back and take a deep breath. Usually when they were about to catch her doing something that was bad. Everybody step back, take a deep breath. All right, maybe that's good advice in this case. Take a step back. All of the people who hate old Virginia and see VMI as symbolic of that, even though it's integrated by race and sex. I mean, you've got women there now. You've got all different types of people, not just from Virginia, from around the country. People forget that I used to be a reporter. When I first started talking about this a couple of years ago, I went out and met with cadets personally, privately, and said, tell me, before I make a fool out of myself, tell me, is this school like the movie The Lords of Discipline? I mean, are there people being singled out by race or gender and abused? It's not a happy place to be your first year, the rat year, where you're constantly challenged physically and mentally and academically. And the whole point is to get you off your game and teach you not to be stomped, but to be resilient. And no matter what comes your way, you're going to fight forward. That's the whole mindset behind going to VMI, is to train someone not to be a pacifist weakling, but to fight forward in their personal life and, if need be, for the country. And I talked to a lot of these cadets, and not one of them said anything about racism. And I had to find some black students too, just to make sure that they didn't have a completely different perspective about some things that were happening behind the scenes that maybe the white cadets didn't know about. The only thing that anybody expressed concern about, at least to me, was that there was a different standard for athletes on the post, both from an admissions perspective and from a expectation standard, a set of standards on the post for athletes, which is not unique just to VMI. I think there are a lot of schools where they're like, yeah, okay, you don't have to take this test, or we're going to look the other way because we cannot afford to lose you on the basketball team or the football team or whatever, the wrestling team, whatever it is. I don't think that's unique to VMI. I'd be surprised if it was widespread at VMI just because of what I've observed over the years. But is there a way to step back and resolve this problem without it being either slammed and smashed by a new board, or the proposal from the Democrats is for it the VMI board to be abolished and for the school to be taken over by Virginia State University. No offense to VSU, a historically black college and university. I got no hostility to them at all, but that doesn't make sense to me that they would run VMI. I'm not even sure where that proposal would come from.
Let's take these one at a time, because you could spend an entire podcast on issues with each one of these bills. The first thing about stepping back, the House bill for the study asks for the years 2020 to the current time. Okay, we have data that's been offered to VMI, it's been offered to everybody, that's been researched for 5 years that goes back to 2019 to 2020 to the current. That data is available now. You don't need to do a study, just ask for it, but willing to take it objectively.
But what does it say?
Well, it says that
data that says what?
In general terms, it says that VMI doesn't have a racist problem. It doesn't have a problem with sexual assault or sexual abuse, that it's below what other schools are. Let me give you some quotes from the Barnes and Thornburg report. Okay, now you won't find these in the main body of the report. You have to do like our researchers did and dig back into the underlying stuff. These are quotes. No explicit racist or sexist policies, racist or sexist culture disparity impact minorities and women. Okay, this report does not recommend that VMI's core policies, practices, traditions, including the honor court rat line, be abolished. Okay.
So this is from the group that was hired to be skeptical, if not confrontational.
Right. Here's another
in their
one.
Analysis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's another one. Now, this is at the time before Lieutenant General Furness's predecessor took over. Okay. VMI's under General P. VMI's retention rates for students of color, for women, and Pell Grant recipients were higher than the retention rates for the Virginia comparison groups in 2018. Okay, no problem with Title X. The investigation revealed little evidence of any religious intolerance. So all that data is available. They didn't.
All right, so let's go through that. There's the sexual assault component, that the allegation that a lot of schools have to deal with. I'm not dismissing it. It's important that women and men are not abused sexually on these campuses, especially a school like VMI where you have a lot less freedom to respond to circumstances. So this report, the group that was hired to be skeptical and dig and to be confrontational, determined that was not I won't say not a problem, but not a significant, unique problem for VMI. Not out of the realm of what other schools were dealing with.
Precisely. Here's another one.
And then the racial issue, which was, that's the potent thing. Nobody, I don't think, I don't think there's any Republican elected official, certainly not me, wants to see any minority dismissed, abused, insulted, offended, treated poorly, in any interaction with state government. And yet that was the anecdotal assertion, the assertion in the Washington Post that I think was based on anecdotes that when I actually read the stories and had the reporter on the radio program, I kept thinking this is, I never want to dismiss something that someone has a concern over, but it didn't sound to me like it matched the headline. Like I expected to hear that black cadets were being dragged out of their beds secretly at 2:00 in the morning and beaten with pillowcases with bars of soap or, metal brass tacks in it, like something you'd see in a movie. And then they were sworn to secrecy. You're not allowed to tell anybody that we've abused you that way. That's the kind of thing I was expecting. And I would have raised hell about that. But the allegations were not of things like that. It was, I think if I remember correctly, one of the stories was that one of the professors made some comment, I think, about one of their family members having been in the KKK. Am I remembering that correctly? Or
That's
do you recall that?
That's correct.
So, I don't know. I mean, maybe in the context of the class setting, that was unsettling for someone. I'm not sure, but that really doesn't rise to the type of abuse or racial animosity that I would have expected based on the fury that we heard after the series of Washington Post stories. It just didn't, there was nothing there, it seemed to me.
You're correct. Let me give you a couple examples to support what you just said. This peer review was conducted by people that had nothing to do with VMI. They're subject matter experts in this area. Okay. The first thing is that I graduated in 79. My class president was the first black class president in VMI history.
Was he treated badly in 1979? I mean, you elect class president? It's elected?
Yeah, we elected class presidents then. Yeah. I don't know what they do now, but we elected a class president. He was a strong supporter of VMI. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Is he today?
Well, he's deceased now, but until his death, he was a strong supporter of VMI. Okay. And he, at one of our reunions, gave a presentation on why it didn't matter to him that there was a Confederate flag on his class ring. He didn't see that as racist. Okay. He was a very objective guy, salt of the earth, one of the greatest Americans, somebody we need defending VMI today. Unfortunately, he passed away. But another thing that this group looked at is they went back and looked at all of the racial violations that were filed with the Department of Education from when they started the program in the 1960s until the date of the Barnes and Thornburg report, okay, which Barnes and Thornburg never looked at, okay. Spoiler alert, there was one.
There was one what?
One complaint by a black about racism at VMI filed federally in that entire time period. And it was withdrawn because that individual went back and said they brought that into the VMI system and VMI adjudicated their problem.
All right. Well, let me ask you this candidly, Bob. Is there any chance that complaints weren't filed or that this one complaint was withdrawn because the cadet was intimidated by alums or by people on the post? Or, I mean, I think I have to ask that. Do you think that there is no evidence of a problem because everyone covered up the problem? I mean, is there any chance of that?
I don't think there is. I've looked back in the archives records of what a group that the Cadet Equity Association and its predecessor over the years did. There's always a possibility somebody's going to get, intimidated or feel intimidated. But there was never any proof uncovered, and the Barnes and Thornburg report itself did not uncover any proof. And if you look at the House bill now that wants to study, it lists all the accusations. Many of them are similar to what was in the original letter that started the Barnes and Thornburg report. And it's a very dangerous precedent that those are thrown out there without any substantive evidence that did it. Okay. None of the allegations in the Washington Post were ever substantiated, even by the Barnes and Thornburg. So I think if people were to look at the facts, we would be and calm down and actually took some of the disenfranchised people who were out there over the years and let them come in and lay this out and do a fact-based basis, things would calm down and people would look at it. But I don't think I have not seen to date any substantial evidence of systemic racism or systemic sexual abuse.
As an observer, over the last couple of years, this appears to me to have become all political, and that VMI is turning into, along with the University of Virginia, one of the institutions in America where the reverse racism of diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to be litigated in the public, in politics, and perhaps in the courts. And is there any way to turn this around here? Or, I guess the Democrats they're looking for a fight. That it seems to be that they feel like this is a winner for them, so they're upping the ante instead of trying to work behind the scenes to fix it.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. You can see this, we'll do this. I think you're spot on. And I've been in some of the press meetings they've had and things like that up in Richmond, and there are people who are spoiling for a fight. A lot of this, if you look at it, goes back to some people are very upset that the former superintendent didn't get his contract renewed. Okay,
and this is the first black superintendent of the school, and he was a VMI graduate, just in full transparency. And
That's
he
right.
seemed to think, I don't want to put words in his mouth, that's not my place to do that, but he seemed to think there was a problem.
Yes, and he did take credit for solving that problem. For example, one of his last messages said that to the Corps and to the alumni, said that he was satisfied that the statues and all that was balanced out. We don't need legislation to handle a personnel dispute. Okay, these folks can get together. The facts are out there. The cadets themselves reported on it. They fact-checked his allegations. There's plenty of data. They don't need legislation to do this. They can all sit in a room if they're all willing to be fair and listen to outsiders and some folks who have the expertise to lay this out.
Well, you just hit on it, I think, Bob. It's a desire to be fair. And I hate to say this. I think there are plenty of people in modern Virginia, some of them Virginians, some of them not Virginians, a lot of them not Virginians, who really hate anything to do with old Virginia. And they assume that anything that is a living, breathing leftover from previous centuries, or quite frankly, even a statue from previous centuries, is overtly racist and must be erased from modern modern Virginia. And I think that's a very anti-intellectual attitude, certainly when it comes to artwork and statues, but when it comes to institutions, they don't seem to be able to pull an objective analysis of what's going on. And even when they get a report back that says we don't see something here and we're unaware and we haven't discovered anything that is out of the realm of what other schools are dealing with, they still insist on riding the racism train to force change. And hopefully somebody will stand up against it. I know you have been an outspoken critic of some of those changes, and you've defended. I think this is pretty noble. You've gone out of your way to defend the individual cadets and their rights on the post, and I'm appreciative of that. If somebody wants to follow your work, Bob, where can they do that?
They can go to www.thecadetfoundation.org and look at it. And
right.
Two quick final points, John, for you.
Real fast.
One is, it's interesting that in that House bill, they make all the accusations. But the other thing that's interesting is you talk about historically black colleges and VCU. Okay.
VSU.
Yeah, VSU. I'm sorry.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
If you look in the archives of VSU, as we have done, you'll find that VSU states that had it not been for the efforts of a VMI alumnus who was a Confederate general in the Civil War, that school wouldn't exist. So everybody has some ties to the Confederacy in the past. Okay, the guy may have been a Confederate general, but he's responsible for starting a number of historically black colleges in Virginia. Okay, there are good things here. But when you get to the point where you decide we need to change the facts to support what we want to get across here, it's never going to get to a reasonable conclusion, and that's when you get federal intervention. When you start messing with the federal pipeline, you have to accept that.
Well, I think the Trump administration and the Department of War probably got everybody's attention yesterday, and it should. Look, this is the 250th anniversary of America. There are a bunch of different stories that you can tell about our past. The question is whether those stories are going to poison the future or not. And I can take any individual who's ever lived on the planet and probably tell a story that will make you hate them. And if I work hard enough, I can try to find something that will be redemptive about them in most cases. And it's just puzzling to me, the people who seem to hate everybody who's dead, and they want to use those stories, I don't think to make things better, but to either win politically in the moment or to poison the minds and the hearts and the spirit of the people who are going to live for decades to come. And I think we really need to be cautious about that. And VMI is just one example of where I think we're seeing that. Bob Morris from the Cadet Foundation. I appreciate the chance to talk to you always. Thank you, Bob. Okay, let's take a quick break. When we return on the Reid Revolution, we will pick up the conversation about Henrico County schools and the Ramadan meals. And there are a couple of other big. Do you know how much it costs if you want to walk around starting Friday, the opening ceremonies of the Olympics in Milan, Italy? And I always get a hat that says U.S. Olympic team for whatever year the Olympics take. So yesterday I did what I normally do, even though I have no money to throw away on any of this stuff. I indulged and I looked online because I thought, well, maybe I can afford a hat or some mittens. U.S. Olympic team, Milan 2026. Oh, my God. The prices are out of control. I'll tell you about it. I want to know. I want to have friends who can wear the U.S. Olympic team outfit here domestically, because you're just not going to believe what they're charging for this stuff. For civilians, hope the athletes all get it when we return on this Wednesday edition of the Reid Revolution.